Howdy, folks. I'm Grotto Goblin of the Goblin's Grotto, and welcome to another Bones 6 Tales from the Green Griffin Kickstarter video for April, no, May, June, June 2023. June 2023. It's the update video thing. Yes. Uh, all right. Well, there's a lot to cover, so I'm not gonna spend too much time digging into that. So let's do this thing. All right. First things first. There's been a lot of discussion over the past couple of months about what are these things made out of, because Reaper has brought up that hey, some of the things coming in this campaign are going to be 3D printed. They haven't done that in any previous campaigns, so there's been some concerns because a lot of people, they hear 3D printing, they think the type of printers you get at home. Now these are going to be on industrial grade printers, so it's a bit higher quality, and they can take a better, sturdier material, but they are still 3D printing. So if that is of concern to you, this little upcoming breakdown will be something you want to look at. Everything on the screen right now, though, is not 3D printed. This is in Bones Black, which has become Reaper's new classic, I guess you could say, material. Most minis you're going to get from Reaper Mini these days are probably going to be this, or if they're coming out new, Bones USA, which we'll get to in a second. As you can see, though, the vast majority of the stuff in this campaign is in some way made of Bones Black. And if you already own some Reaper Minis or you participated in previous Kickstarters, specifically Bones 5, you have lots of Bones Black material to pull from. So, just go ahead and give a little look over of what you see here. You might even see some new titles. We will get to that later. First things first, though, this is the stuff in the campaign that will be in Bones USA or Bones USA RMP. That is Reaper Mini print. It's a little unclear, I have to say, exactly what the difference will be, because in some of these, this is how they listed it: Bones USA injection. Well, they do make Bones USA materials. Bones USA is just the material. It is not made up of the bones of U.S. citizens. No, it is just another type of plastic resin. It gets a little finer detail than, say, Bones Black. But I do feel like it may be a little easier to cut or break in some cases, but it's not brittle by any means. Sort of an in-between with Bones Black and Bones Classic, but with more detail than either, if that makes sense. But as far as how this Kickstarter is going, how this campaign is going, they have injection and print, which leads me to believe that the injection ones are just going to be straight up the standard process, but using Bones USA. And then the print, they will be printing off stuff with the material that they use in Bones USA, but through a printer process, so they won't use molds. Ultimately, I feel like the effect is probably going to be negligible. They have been putting out printed models. If you go on the Reaper store, all of the most recent miniatures that they've been doing, and they're, you spend over a certain amount, you get a free mini. They've all been printed models. Excuse me. And if you look on their store and you see this logo next to any miniatures, that means that it is a printed model. So if you go on the store, you find a mini with this little button, this wizard guy, this bugbear guy, this new wasp nettle wizard folk. By the way, these both go with the corresponding sets in the campaign, which you can see up here, Blood Club and wasp nettle. Then you can hit this little logo and see all the minis that they're selling that are printed. Although there are a few giveaway type minis that were printed at one point and now are not, so it's a little confusing. But for the most part, this is what we're getting in the campaign itself. It's going to be printed or in Bones USA material. So expect high detail minis, but maybe don't like throw them at your wall. But there'll be plenty quality. And now we come to the Bones Classic or ABS. These minis are Bones Classic has become kind of different than what it used to be. If you're thinking about that white, really bendy, warping classic, like old bone stuff, you can still get some of those. They still sell them. That's not quite what Bones Classic is today. As you can see down here, it now is more this just kind of a light gray material that it catches detail, but it definitely has more of a gloss or sheen to it. It just doesn't catch nearly as much detail as Bones USA. If we go back and we look at these photos down here, I mean, this is pretty detailed. Like you can see a lot of stuff, even in this tiny photo. With these, yeah, there's a lot of detail, but it's a little blurrier, I guess you could say. Um, but Bones USA is better for smaller minis, really detailed minis. Bones Classic is going to be for your big stuff. So like these are large minis, and if you participated in the previous campaign, right, and even Bones 4 and going back a little further than that, if you picked up any of the dragons or the really huge items, those were going to be made out of Bones Classic in some way, shape, or form because it's just easier to make larger minis out of this material. So, if you have anything large from Reaper, you already know what Bones Classic is like. So, now that we have discussed the materials, we can start looking at what actually we're getting. And there's a lot of little close-ups to see this time around. And, well, without further ado, here is a new look at our band, our men-at-arms, our multi-part guard figures. So you could very well use these as something other than guards. There are many combinations you can make, but as I have pointed out in the past, this specific arm setup holding the greatsword and the archer bow combo, technically you kind of have to use those arms on one mini. If you take this one arm and another and you try to stick them on another mini, it's not going to work. So it's not completely uh, free customization, but of course you could swap out the heads and stuff like that. The torso, the bodies, they appear to be all the same. And by the way, this paint job, very nice, lovely to see. Sometimes I really love when they paint these minis because you can catch little details that maybe would have gone unnoticed on that pure gray or black or green form that they show them off in sometimes. Now, one set that got a lot of attention over these past few months is Lost Tomb of Hakir. We have been getting lots of updates on these minis. For instance, Reaper's discussing whether or not to send us the God minis on plinths or like a separate little plinth pieces, maybe to sell as options, or who knows. But here are some test prints of our avatars themselves. Looking really great. Again, not actually sculpted by Reaper's usual roster of sculptors. This was a third party. So they don't necessarily perfectly fit in next to some of Reaper's like hand sculpted terrain like this, or its other minis. There's Sir four scale. This bit of tomb archway. But you know they look great regardless, and it all still has the kind of the Egyptian kind of vibe. Moving on though, we have some looks at like the core set, for instance. This is a dwarf from the core set. Big fan of pretty much everything except for some of the little symbols on the axe. I don't know why they're so wibbly wobbly cartoony. The rest of them was not like that. Here's our demon snake lady. Great for a yuan ti or just you know demon snake lady in general. A Medusa type creature, perhaps you could fashion it. our elven hunting cat. I don't know what about this is elven, but it honestly, I mean, and honestly, I guess it's a cat. Weird looking cat. One of our beholder knockoffs. This one doesn't have eye stalks, but it does have multiple eyes. Still, if you notice, they are kind of retracted in its body. Maybe that's how it keeps them from getting sliced off. It just keeps them in its body and like pops them out as needed. Pretty cool, pretty neat design. Lard gulp, of course. Love the little detail of like the shield being a arm guard, and like femur bones is the other. We look at one of the werewats. Werewat. A were-rat or werewolf. I believe it is meant to be a wolf, a lupine, but I mean, you could use it as either. Uh, which, I like minis like that where it might be one thing, but you can use it as another. And here is our nightmare. The base is a temporary thing, but they have discussed doing more with the base, and I really hope they do because I don't really like how plain it is at the bottom, and it looks like it would just snap off of whatever flat base I try to put it on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if this gets more updates. That's not the only thing to get a look at though. Here is our shimmer scale from the Briarwood Vale. Now this one has a lot of images to look at and some things to point out with that. You saw it in the promo and you're like, oh, that's a pretty big fairy dragon type thing, but you don't realize how large it is. This thing is huge. Here it is next to Sir Scale. Now it is raised up on a little bit of a base, and he's not, so there's that little bit of height. But here is the fairy dragon next to a Ganzarax from Bones 5. Now, this black dragon is huge. I showed it off on the channel a long time ago. It's one of the taller minis in my entire collection. And this fairy dragon, well, up at the wingtip, is taller. That's wild. And the fact that this cost in Bones 5, it was like a $30, $35, depending on when you picked it up. But it was a single purchase for, what you might expect to pay, like a WizKid model that's, half the size in the store. So you had to pay that just for this one mini, a huge mini. This one, you pay a bit more, and it comes in a whole expansion for $50. So this mini on its own would, if these were equivalently priced, would be like $30. So for $30, you get this mini, and then for the 20 extra that come with the expansion, you would get everything else in Briarwood Vale. Wild. They're doing that like that. And as it was noted earlier, this is coming in different material, by the way. This is a test print. That's how Reaper does their thing. So they're all test prints until further notice. One cool detail of Shimmer Scale here is that there's been a little bit of a follow along, paint along with this figure. And as you can see, our artist here, Carrie Michelle Cosby, has been doing an amazing job. Now, this model was purely opaque print material, so there was no like translucency possible, but there's been multiple times said that the wings would be coming clear. Now, as far as I know, as far as they've said, that hasn't changed, so when we get this, the wings should be clear, but you can always just paint them opaque if you would rather do some look like this. All right, brief arachnophobia warning for the following image. So here is a pair of spiders next to Sir Forescale, who I assume is friends with the spiders since they're all wearing the same like color scheme. We've seen the big spider, but that little jumping spider guy, relatively little. Haven't seen him. I think he's cute. Not cute in like I would love to see that in real life and have it as a pet, but cute in like a fantastical. It's not real, just a little buddy spider that follows me around in my role playing games type of situation. Pardon me. A brief trypophobia and vermiophobia warning for the following image. So this is from our Brian Wynn Pirates number 2 option power up. That set actually would have been in the core set, but we never reached that goal, so they just added it as a power up. It is what it is. These stills come from Reaper's like sculpting program, and I never uploaded them in the best quality, but from what you can see here, it is a gruesome thing. It goes right along with those Sons of Barty, those hagfish zombie things. You kind of wonder, are the hagfish actually like these ugly eel things? Are they actually the things in charge, or is it the zombie? I don't know. If they're doing piracy, they're at least a little sentient. So, interesting, yucky, gross figure. Now, the other ones that come in the set, decidedly not as yucky and gross and hard to look at. Here's one of our pirates. Nothing about this guy is particularly piratey, I guess. It looks like maybe he does have like a compass on his hip there, but yeah, I mean, all the guns and everything, like, he could just be like a cool gunslinger guy, and I think he'd be a perfect, PC or NPC mini for that purpose. Now, if your world doesn't have gunpowder, I mean, he's either going to be a very interesting exception, or you're not going to be able to use as many. Probably fun to paint, though, either way. Moving on, we have this tiefling rogue, I suppose, given all the knives. Yeah, this is a very cool character mini. Love the potion, the poison vial there, and the way that this tail kind of curls into like a sickle shape. The hair is great. I love the flow of the dress. Person really loves knives. I appreciate that one of the knives is actually just a pair of scissors. Hey, maybe they're a barber in their spare time. But yeah, great mini. Now this next one, I'm sure if you showed this to somebody and didn't tell them it came in a pirate set, they'd never know it's meant to be a pirate. That's fine. It's a great piece. I really love it. It has a very like flower theme to me. There's a flower in the hair, and then all the armor kind of has the like flower petal vibe, and the weapon there has almost like the thorn type of thing you would see in like a thorn bush or something like that, or certain flower stems have that kind of hooked, barbed thing to keep insects from crawling up them. Great figure. Only problem is this massive infill right here. It's an unfortunate thing when you're making models, whether it be prints or molds. You can't really just have like a thin sheet like this, and unless you're doing a multi-part thing and you have to adhere it on there, so you have to do these fills. That's pretty bad, that fill, but it is what it is. Just have to paint it some kind of color that you don't notice it, I guess. Moving on, we have our first proper look at the printout of this lich creature. This is our rider for our 30th anniversary dragon, exclusive to the Kickstarter campaign. As far as exclusivity goes, the dragon itself is probably going to be exclusive, but it may sometime make some kind of return. But this guy was going to be just 100% exclusive. That's the deal. So if you want this, you got to get it now. It'll come with a writing version and a version like this, which, as I'm looking at his base, I guess if you take him off the base fully, it kind of is like a little dice jail surrounded by crows. Kind of neat. Speaking of birds, here is our mother owlbear and owlbear totem from one of the encounters. Um, as I'm looking at the totem, it could be wood or stone. You could really paint it up however you want. I'd love to get more owl bears. I have a tradition of painting them at big milestones. So, yeah, I'm definitely happy to be getting more of those. And now we have some looks at our Horror of the Slaughter Waller, one of our newest expansions, our newer power-ups, I guess you could say. These are test prints, but they're pretty good. Definitely coming along. I like all of the different weaponry and beating implements that these guys have. And the horror element is definitely there. This is a gruesome power up for sure. That is not cowhide, I'll say that. Um, but yeah, this is not a set for fun times. pretty awful, yucky little encounter to use these in. Moving on, though, something that I know everybody is very excited about, and it was a meme for a long time, the lighthouse. Now, these images you're seeing here are of a test print that will be changing. They have already said that the canopy is a little too short. It's going to be changed up, maybe made into another type of material. Whether or not the height of the tower changes, who knows? But as you can see with all of these shots, it is not meant to be like a structure that you live inside of, and it's more of just kind of a watchtower type thing that someone would climb up. Um, and if you don't even have to use that little canopy up there, you can just have your figure up there. I will say, now that you can see that Sir Forescale up here, his sword raised up like that would be higher than the canopy. So I feel like they need to raise it for not even just the concerns people had about the fire, like catching the canopy on fire. Um, it's a different kind of lighthouse, I suppose. But just to have a mini in there, you kind of can't have the canopy. But either way, I mean, the fire looks really cool. They said this is going to be in clear so that you can use your ink paints and just kind of dye the flames. But yeah. And I've seen some people discussing that this canopy would be perhaps metal reinforced and then cloth draped over top. Either way, you probably still want flame in that thing. But that's not the only thing coming in the set. Obviously, the lighthouse is the main thing, but there are some minis coming with it too. Here is our Slaughter Walrus, as it has been so named. Just a big chunky boy. If you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, there's a walrus in there that I'm probably just gonna I'm gonna borrow the name from that character. So for going forward, this is gonna be Teefs for me. And here is our lighthouse keeper, which, if you didn't know, is undead. He is a skeleton wielding an anchor by the looks of it. It's crazy. He does have a little bird companion there. But yeah, I suppose an undead lighthouse keeper is good if you are not wanting to pay a living person for food and lodging. Presumably this guy, he just sits up there and feeds his little bird friend. Just keeping everything lit up. Wait a minute. Okay, so I just want to say something about this before I move on. He has an eye patch. He has one eye, so do skeletons see magically, or do they still need eyes? If he has an eye patch, like, presumably he could lift that up and see with, like, his magical skeleton eye, right? I don't know. Mechanical question for skeletons and magic. Moving on. Rot Stump Bog. We've seen these before, but there is something important to point out about them. Um, you know, things have been sort of settled on. For instance, this knight here, who I would love to get in a non dead form. Um, they've gone with the version where his chest is caved in. So that appears to be the direction, because originally there was no such injury there. He kind of just looked like a guy taking a nap. But that guy definitely not sleeping. But moving on, the other mini in the set are these Sturges. And here's some lovely concept art for the Sturges. But yeah, you would get 3 Sturges, and it would just be one of these sitting guys, one of the flying ones with the tail curving that way, one curling the other way. But now, after listening to people suggest this for weeks or months, they have decided to add in an extras just for the Sturges. Now, it's going to be a swarm of Sturges for $6, which will contain 10 random Sturges. So high, low, and grounded. That seems to be how that they are describing the Sturges in this instance. The thing about them being random and being 10, but then there's 3 different versions, it does mean, like, no matter how you pull this, you can't get an even spread of the 3. You can get mostly flying ones, since there's 2 out of 3 are flying. But the specific models, if you get this and Rodstone Bog, then hey, that's 13 Sturges. It's a nice, fair number. You will at least for sure get the 3 that come with the Rodstone being all of the different sculpts. But beyond that, it's a random draw. For $6 though, it's a pretty good deal for these. What are tiny miniatures, made a little bit bigger due to the rocky base on some of them. But I hope it's not too random though, because I would hate to pay $6 and get all of the grounded ones, like no flying ones, or all flying and no grounded. I want variety. So I hope the pull is sort of considered and weighed accordingly. Maybe if there was one more grounded sculpt, things would be a little better, because you can have like, well, this is your grounded pile, this is your flying pile, and pull evenly from there. But hard to say. Hard to say. Now this is a site for sore eyes. We discussed this a while back, and oh yeah, these are new power-ups, new options. Yeah, this is the Chibi Dragon, the Pathfinder officially licensed Chibi Dragon that goes with all the other little chibi characters from Pathfinder. The Goblin's not shown here. This was an officially licensed miniature that didn't make it into the initial Kickstarter campaign, but it was officially licensed from Pathfinder, so they were kind of contractually obligated to include it at some point. So here it is. You can pick it up in the campaign manager, the pledge manager, for a mere $10. Now, I kind of look at this design, and it looks a little inspired by Trondar, but nothing about it is so cartoony that it wouldn't fit in a regular game. I mean, the eyes are pretty big, and that little brass statue thing, well, it doesn't have to be brass, but this little face down here is a little cartoony, but it's not so much so that you couldn't just throw it into regular play. But yeah, I think $10 is reasonable, and I have picked it up. Shout out to Michael Proctor for the excellent paint job. Now, do you recognize this image? This is an old image. This is from the Lair of the Deep Ones, a option that was teased well in advance of the entire Bones 6 campaign that just didn't quite make it in. But here it is. This guy on his throne, this big fishy man, is an available add-on. But wait, there's more. Yeah, you can also get some more little terrain and other minis in this full-on encounter, including this, I guess, fountain statue. I mean, they're underwater, presumably, so who knows what's coming out of these things. But yeah, so you have another fish lady with crab hands. Really into that sort of Lovecraftian deep one horror on this. A pair of fishy lanterns, which are either sculpted to look like fish or are just dead fish with little glow lights that these deep one denizens have just kind of slapped on pedestals, which I guess that's a fine way of lighting, given the limitations. It gets start to rot though. You know, I mean, I guess if you're in this community, you don't really care about that sort of thing. But yeah, this is all of the terrain that you're gonna get with this, including this little sacrificial altar with a cool, like, ammonite squid creature attacking a human skull. That's pretty neat. I do consider this guy terrain because he can't walk around, and they aren't providing like a freestanding mini of him. So yeah, it is what it is. If you try to use him in combat, he can only really fight from the throne. It seems that's unfortunate, but he does look removable, so there's that at least. And we have a print of him, so you can see, as I was saying, the removability. It doesn't look like it's actually like attached. So you can take him off. I don't know what the throne looks like behind him. Some really crazy abomination of water beings from beyond our comprehension, but he himself, not super usable in combat out of that chair, I have to say. But it is what it is. Now, making up for that, though, we do have these three deep one soldiers. I love these sort of fishing weapons, the triple trident type fishing spear, this like big fish hook type thing. It's just like wearing a straight up fish hook. Very cool. Would have loved to maybe gotten a few more, but this is all only $20. So $20 and you're getting all this, and these are big chunky pieces of terrain. So I think that's pretty reasonably priced. I don't know why in the images on here they didn't have the three deep ones. They are coming in the expansion. You do get those, the three soldiers, but I don't know. Sometimes they just don't update this pledge manager with all the photos, but you do get all of what's here plus those three deep ones for only $20. Pretty fair deal, I'd say. Now, another option, add-on, power-up that you may have spotted earlier was called Dead Men Tell No Tales. And if you are a old school Reaper fan, or you've attended some of the past ReaperCons, particularly I believe the 2021, you might recognize some of the stuff in here. They were resident exclusives to those ReaperCons, and now you can get them in this campaign as a power-up. Not just this guy, though, and all of his big piratey skeleton throne glory. You will also have the ability to acquire this underwater harp. This sort of, I guess, seahorse harp. It'd be a great, like, hey, this is like the goal of whatever underwater campaign is to go acquire this harp, or some treasure from the shark's mouth. This is some, like, I guess maybe megalodon or shark mouth over here is guarding. So three really neat little terrain pieces. A possible encounter mini. You have to maybe salt and burn the body of this skeleton king guarding his pirate treasure. Just a cool set. The only thing about this that does lend itself to not being underwater, though, is the fact there's like a crow perched up there. You can probably just snip him off if you want this to be underwater, or just paint him like he's made of wood. Up to you. I don't know. Maybe he's just a crow that really can hold his breath underwater for a long period of time. Now, for $14, these 3 terrain pieces can be yours. I will say the pricing scale, there's a lot of detail in these pieces, so fair is fair. I'm sure a lot of work goes into them. It is a little weird that this is $14 and then the one that we showed just before this is 20. I don't know how this pricing works out that tracks, but I guess 14 is fair enough. It's $6 less than that 20. So I mean, hey, if this was 20, I would probably say skip this one, to be honest. But for 14, it's a fair deal, and you say I've already bought it. So, but that is gonna be pretty much it. This has been a bit of a long ramble. I've had to catch up on a lot. That's been going on, but I appreciate all of y'all for coming back and catching up on what's been going on with these campaigns. And yeah, this video is probably not going to be super edited because, as I said, I've been doing a lot of work lately. And don't have a lot of time for video editing, unfortunately. So, but if you want to help me make a little more time, you can always support me on Coffee here by scanning the QR code. You can go there, and you don't have to, but you can always throw me a little bit of money. It helps, pay rent, medical expenses as they come up, and of course, give me just a cup of coffee to get through the day. But as always, I've been Grotto Goblin. You've been you, and I thank you so much for watching. Liking, subscribing, commenting on the video does a lot. As I discussed already, the Ko-fi thing, it's not required in any way, but it does help out. And, that is pretty much it. I didn't really have a script for this video, so all I'm going to say now is take care, have a good one, stay safe, and if you got them, let's go paint some minis.